Welcome to Mr. Otter Studio. Today I'm going to show you how to use a grid to transfer an image onto another surface. This might be a photograph that you've taken, that you have, or a photograph that you found. The grid is a tool that you can use as an artist to transfer your images, to enlarge your images. For some people, it makes it a lot easier to draw accurately because you're breaking it down into squares. This is a little bit more mathematical. There's many artists that use this technique: Albrecht Dürer, Chuck Close, Leonardo da Vinci. Also, sometimes if you don't want to draw a ton of squares and make a huge grid over this, sometimes I'll just put a simple 4-square grid on my drawings when I'm painting a mural just to keep it in perspective. If you're trying to transfer your photograph onto a canvas or a larger piece of paper, it's going to keep it in the right proportions. You do have to make sure that the grid you draw on the photograph and the grid that you draw on your paper or your canvas or whatever you're transferring it onto are perfect squares, or else it won't work. These are the supplies that you need. You need to print out your reference photo. I just put it on some printer paper so that it's easy for me to draw on top of. Some people like to put a clear sheet of paper over the top of this and draw their grid on that. So it's totally up to you how you want to do that part. So get a print of your photo. This is one that I took when I was in India a few years ago of the Taj Mahal. You need a ruler, a pencil, an eraser, and then whatever you're going to transfer it onto. I'm just going to enlarge it onto this piece of paper. And so I'm going to make it into a square drawing, and I'm going to move it over here. You are probably going to be using a different reference photo than I'm using. The technique is the exact same. So the first thing you want to do is either draw the grid onto your paper, onto the picture, or you can draw it onto a clear sheet that you've put on top of it. To draw your grid, just make sure that you're keeping it consistent. So I am going to be making this into a square, a 6 by 6 inch square. So I'm going to be using inches just because it's going to be a little bit easier for me. So I just want to make sure I'm keeping it consistent, and I want this to be centered. So I'm trying to bring my 3 just right in the middle of this building, since I know that's the middle of 6. And then I'm just going to make a little indication on the side of where that hits. And then I want to make sure that I'm keeping this line vertical instead of like going sideways. So I'm just going to measure from the side over and keep it the same. I'm going to enlarge a part of this. You might be enlarging the whole photograph, and that is a lot easier than just enlarging part of it, because then you don't need to make this box around it that I'm making, and you can just start drawing your grid. So draw your side vertical lines first. So these 2 lines. Since this is 6 by 6, I'm just going to try to find the 3 and kind of put it in the middle. I want to make sure I keep this inside. So I want to make sure I include enough of the top and just a little bit of the bottom. So the first thing to do is to draw a grid over your photograph or on the acetate paper and make sure you keep those very square. If you're drawing like me, I'm not using the borders of my actual photograph. I'm making it smaller. I just want to enlarge part of it. So I actually have to measure in from the sides and keep it accurate. If you're trying to do that, just find the middle of your image and work from that. Use the edges of your paper to keep things perfectly vertical and perfectly horizontal. One thing you can do that was helpful for my students is to label these. So like A, B, C, D, E, and F. And then number this side. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So then we can find, if you're like, oh, I don't know which square this is, you just look and you can find it using the grid method, which makes it easier. After you've drawn the grid, and you can label it like this if it's helpful for you. And remember, this is just a tool you can use. It doesn't mean you have to use this when you draw, but you can. It's there for you if you want to use it. So now these squares are 1 inch by 1 inch, and I'm going to make them 1.5 inches by 1.5 inches on my paper. So I already have my 2 vertical lines because 6 inches times 1.5 is 9. My paper is 9 inches wide. So I'm going to be using these sides as my edges, which is nice. Then I just need to make sure whatever horizontal line I use, it is perfectly horizontal. So I'm just going to measure from the top. And I know it's going to be 9 inches. Okay, and then I know that it's going to be 9 inches this way. So I'm just going to make my bottom line at 9 inches. And yours might be different. You might not be drawing a square, but whatever it is, just keep it consistent. All right, now I'm going to make a mark every 1.5 inches. Do the same thing on the top. Make your vertical lines. Here's a quick tip. You need to draw this grid really, really lightly because you're going to be erasing it. You can use a lighter pencil if you have it, or you can just not press as hard. And then you're going to make your vertical lines going in this direction. Mark where they're going to be first. Then very lightly draw your grid. The nice thing with doing this on a painting is you usually cover it all up. After you've drawn your grid, you can go ahead and label it just like I labeled this one. Once you have your grid drawn on your image and onto your paper and they're perfect squares and you know that it's going to be in scale, then you just start each square and you start drawing what you see. You can draw indications of shadows. I like to start out with the outline, and after I get most of the outline in, then I like to erase some of these lines. You don't want to get too detailed too quickly because you do have to erase all of these grid lines. So keep that in mind. All right, so you can start on the top or on the bottom. I'm just gonna start on the bottom left, but really there's no right or wrong way to do this. So really quickly, for example, I'm transferring this square right here, and I can see that this tree is cut in half and that it is not as close to the top of this line as this part. So then I'm just gonna bring it over and down. After you get the majority of the shapes and parts of it on there, then you want to use your eraser and erase out some of these lines. So I like to use a stiff eraser to do this just because some of them are in some spots that you don't want to erase everything. You just want to erase little parts. And hopefully you didn't draw as dark as I did. Once you get the majority of those lines erased, then you can come back in with your pencil and fix some of those lines that got erased. You can finish this, of course, however you want. You could paint it, you could add some color to it, you can add all of the details, but hopefully using the grid has helped you translate or reproduce your drawing on a larger scale or to scale, even on the same size of paper. And you can use this technique, again, to enlarge artwork, to transfer it onto different surfaces. You can add color to this. I hope you learned something in this tutorial. Use a grid if it's helpful for you. It's just one of those tools the artists use to create their artwork. Let us know if you like using the grid, what problems you had with it in the comments below. Please subscribe if you enjoyed watching, and have a wonderful day.